Hey folks, welcome back to the channel on episode number 5 of Do It Yourself Paint Your Corvette, and we are picking up right where we had left off last week. If you're just tuning in for the first time, haven't seen last week's episode, we were hand sanding with 320 grit, primarily most of the panels while they were still semi fastened to the car because it's just easier. I've even done the flexible panels. The reason I do the flexible panels, especially in the big areas when it's connected to the car, is because that's how the panel is supposed to sit. When you take it off, put it on a stand, it is flexible, it can bend, it can form some different ridges that'll get sanded. So the big areas, while it's secured to the car, just gonna go ahead and knock that out. Last week we've covered glazing putty, and we went through and we filled a lot of the chips. And we talked a little bit about high spots, but in the process of doing a little bit of sanding before I started recording, I started to see this area here, and I'm going to bring the camera over and show this to you, but it looks like I have a low spot, and I'm going to show you how we're going to fix that. All right, so the first thing we're going to address over here is after the glazing putty, I'm still doing some hand sanding, okay? Not putting a lot of pressure. Still letting the sandpaper do its job. Your job as the sander is to make sure that this pad just lays flat to its surface. And let the sandpaper do its work, do an orbital, can't pronounce that word, do a circular pattern, wax on, wax off, Karate Kid type stuff. And it's gonna take a little bit until it sands that away. Now, I got up here and I was doing the same thing. Real low spot, the glazing putty is probably gonna fix this. But I put a swipe of glaze putty in there to level the surface, and we'll be putting a little bit of primer sealer over top of that before we start laying down our paint. Just to make sure, I'm gonna use a hard block. We're good. Spot's taken care of. Back to the prep portion of this. So with the rear bumper, you have these big, huge radiused areas. You know, it's a lot of real estate there. Same thing right here, around the license plate, over in this area. And for the sake of production and because I have the experience at it, I'm actually gonna use an air sander, but I do wanna talk to you guys about sanders. There's something important that you got to know. Okay, this is what's called a finish sander. The orbital mechanism inside has a completely different gear ratio than what my Matco sander does, and this is called a production sander. This is more for doing body work, and this is more for doing paint prep, paint correction type repair, you know, color sanding, stuff like that. Finish sander, you may notice that there is a squishy pad in between my sandpaper and the disc itself. That's called an interface pad. As usual, I'll put links to everything down below so that you guys don't really have to go searching. Just click the link, it'll take you right to where it's at on Amazon. These interface pads are really cheap, and they save you from making a lot of mistakes, especially on curved surfaces and things like that. Now, a couple of the areas that I'm gonna stay out of, I'm gonna stay out of here. That's gonna be a pretty tough spot. Definitely gonna stay away from my third brake light. I've already gone over the Corvette emblem and got that all nice and flat now. That's gonna get a coat of sealer over it, a little bit down here. And then over on this side, I'll show you that I'm gonna hit all this, but these complex areas, I'm gonna leave that for a little bit of hand sanding. If I can get in here and hit some of the bigger areas just to save time, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Let's get started. This is another one of those spots. I'm gonna go as far as I can, but it has a little bit of a concave right here, so you wanna be really cautious because you could sand a lot of this away and not know it, thinking that you're sanding and prepping this area. Between the taillights, nice and easy. All right, making progress. So I have sanded the whole back bumper as much as I possibly can with an air sander, and now I'm moving on to the trunk lid. So being as though this car was a coupe to begin with, I had to buy this trunk lid. This came out of a salvage yard in Miami. Really good condition, but it's got these couple of stripes on here. Somebody did a nice job laying them out. Nice finish. But I have to get these off of here because this car is just going back one solid color, and these are going to show up. Now, you can get these off a couple of ways, and you can certainly do it with a hand sanding pad, and it's going to take you a while. But primarily what you're trying to do, there's a misconception that you would have to sand this completely off to get it to go away from the car, and that's actually not the case. What you want to do is you want to make it thin enough that it feather edges all the way along, and I'll bring the camera over and show you just that. So you want this just to feather edge, where the edge of it almost looks like it's jagged, like a bread knife. And that tells you that you've got the paint thin enough through there that you're starting to wear away at that paint. Basically what you're going to do is you're just going to get a nice smooth transition from there all the way over. And because we have paint, and this pertains to the pulling we were talking about in episode 4, see that shiny spot? That's because this red stripe is higher than what this is. So with a hand sanding pad, that's just what we've done with a hand sanding pad. I'm looking to get this done a little quicker. I've probably been sanding on these stripes a good solid 20 minutes to get these down to where I'm going to be able to primer and block them and just make sure that this panel is flat. So just be patient, it doesn't go quickly. You notice that's a really rough looking texture. This is what we call orange peel in this business. And what that is when the paint went down and it was settling and it was laying out, it has very microscopic high spots and low spots, and it gives it the appearance of an orange. It's not a completely flat finish. This is how most cars will come from the factory, okay? Unless you're buying a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, Maserati, Bugatti, something along those lines. That's what you will get on most of your cars coming out of the factory. When I paint something, I paint to a show quality finish. So when I am sanding this, I'm going to make sure that all that orange peel disappears, because just like in the pooling that I explained, anything that's left on your paint is going to magnify when you paint it again, and it's going to be more apparent. So it's easier for me to sand this completely flat now, not have that orange peel to deal with. So I'm continuing to sand over top of this. You may see these spots and wonder what those are. When they shipped this to me, it was all packaged in that clear packaging tape, and that's just some of the glue residue. Some of it is sanded off, but some of it's pretty stubborn. The reason you don't want to continue to keep sanding away at it is, if it's not coming off easy, is because it's going to ball up on your pad. It's going to give you a dead spot on your sanding disc. And trying to sand away at this, you can sand away the outside of it before that disappears. I like to use denatured alcohol myself to remove adhesives. If you don't know what that is, it's also commonly referred to as white gas. Use it in cooking stoves, things like that. I don't know about lanterns. Maybe Molotov cocktails. Oh, that'll probably get me demonetized, but I'm not monetized yet, so. Anyhow, you can see it starts to wear that stuff right off. And being alcohol also cleans your repair surface. So you're not using any petroleum-based products that are going to soak into your paint and cause you to pull out what hair you have left. Not insinuating anybody's bald. Just saying. Now that that alcohol is dried away, you can see these really shiny spots, and what that is that's not glue that's left. That's the paint underneath that never got sanded because the glue was still there. All right, now that the trunk is primarily all sanded, clean up this work area. We are now moving down to this side, this glossy spot right here, and what that is that is some SMC fiberglass resin that I mixed up. There's a little bit of a crack there and a little bit of damage. So to get this all to hold back together on the outside, I just mixed up a little bit of that resin, painted it over top. It's actually still a little tacky and fingerprinting, so I'm gonna have to continue on and leave that alone and let it dry. But I did that, so I'm gonna fix it from the backside, but at least out here I can do this. A little bit of glazing putty. That's a really easy fix, and then I will support it from the backside by grinding it and putting a fiberglass patch. Also did the same thing down here by the wheel well. It's gonna get fixed from behind. To make any more progress on this particular panel, it's probably gonna have to be just sanding off the glazing putty there by the door, and then I will eventually get this door sanded. Door should be ready to come off then. The mirror will come off the inside door panel. I'll finish sanding the inside of the door and everything, and those will go on stands to get shot. Well, y'all, I'm gonna get back to sanding on this door, which is gonna take a little while, and it's gonna be pretty monotonous. So I'm gonna turn on either some Wonder Hussy or Demolition Ranch, continue sanding until I get these doors to a point that I'm ready to pull the panels, pull the door handles, pull the mirrors off of it. And that'll probably be in part 6. That'll be coming up next week. Guys, if you found this episode helpful, be sure to like, subscribe to the channel, and we will catch you guys next week.